I am Ilona Velarda and today I'm interviewing Dr. David Titon, a London and Nicosia-based cardiologist. Welcome, David.
Thank you for inviting me.
Today I would like to ask you about the best diet for the heart. As I know, you've done a lot of research on this subject and written 2 books.
Yes, I have. I first wrote a technical book, which turned out to be a bit too technical for most people, because it's a bit of science in there. And then I decided to write a simpler book, which is this one, Heart Sense, which is written for people that know nothing about medicine or science. And it's an easy read, and it tells you not just about heart and tests that we do for the heart, but also what are the best nutrients and therefore the best diet that you can eat if you have heart trouble or if you want to prevent heart trouble. So Heart Sense, that's called.
Did you have a reason to do the research on the prevention of the heart disease?
I did. I had a patient who had a coronary vein bypass surgery because he had chest pain and angina, and he came to me afterwards and he said, look, I know what I shouldn't eat, all these things like cheese and cream, but what I can't find out about is what I should eat. Tell me what I should eat. And I did a lot of research on that and found that really nobody had written anything much about it. And so I did the research on it.
And why do people like him get heart trouble?
Well, it's due to coronary artery disease. That is the build-up of cholesterol in the interior of the arteries, which stops the flow of blood. And this build-up of cholesterol is partly caused by diet, but more commonly caused by inheritance, by the genetic processes which cause the inner lining to form cholesterol.
So, as you say in your books, the objective of any diet or treatment must be to stop the cholesterol buildup in our arteries.
Yes, that's correct. The object is to stop cholesterol forming on the inside of the arteries, which progressively blocks the artery and can give rise to either angina or heart attacks. And there's been quite a bit of research on what causes this, and we do know that eating fats will make this worse. But there's very little research, except in animals, on the nutrients in food which will stop the furring. We do know that the Mediterranean diet and maybe the Japanese diet contain lots of nutrients which do stop it, but in general there's not a lot of information available about what's good for stopping this cholesterol build-up. Let me show you some illustrations. The first slide I'd like to show you is the furring within the artery. It's called atherosclerosis, but let's call it furring. And the lower picture is this yellow cholesterol substance blocking the artery. Now, if we now turn to a real artery, what you see on this slide is a black tube, which is the artery in the neck. That's called the carotid artery. And this particular example, there is no furring whatsoever. On the third one, and I've put a red arrow here, you can see a lump of cholesterol within the artery, which isn't blocking the artery, but if it grows any more, it will. The fourth illustration is a plaque, as we call it, of cholesterol, which is made up of chalky material, bony material, and scarring material together with cholesterol, which is almost blocking the artery. It's so thick that it causes a black shadow behind it.
In your books you say that you have found many nutrients that prevent the furring.
That's right, well, in animals at least, because no experiments have been done in human beings that I know of. But in animal experiments there are about 15, 16, 20, I can't remember the exact number of nutrients which have been shown in experiments to stop it. There's the metals like magnesium and selenium and zinc. Then you've got some vitamins. Vitamins aren't prominent in this field, but B vitamins like B6 and folic acid are known to do it. Then you've got the oils, which are omega-3, which is fish oil, omega-6 and 9, which come from vegetable oils. And then last of all, and probably even more important than all of those put together, are the subunits of proteins called amino acids. Now, the 2 amino acids which are most important are arginine, which come from plant material, and taurine, which comes from 2 sources. One is shellfish, and the other is the brown meat of chicken and turkey.
And what foods contains these goodies, as you call them in your books?
Well, there's mainly 4 groups, but let me show you some illustrations to make it easier. The first group is nuts and seeds. Almonds, walnuts and sesame seeds are perhaps the best. The next illustration I have for you is fish, oily fish. The oil in the fish is rich in omega-3, and that probably has a big influence on the furring process. Probably even more important is shellfish, the principal one of which is mussels. Now people say shellfish, oh that's bad for you, it's got cholesterol in it. Well, there's very little cholesterol in shellfish. There's more in crabs and lobsters, it's true, but this cholesterol doesn't really get absorbed. The point I want to make is that shellfish contain a lot of the good substances, the zinc and the taurine, etc., which are actually positively good for the arteries. The other one I wanted to show you was offal. Now this comes as a big surprise to people that liver and kidneys and the heart itself, if you eat them from animals, are good for you. The fact is these are chemical storehouses, and they contain all the really good substances with a little bit of the bad substances, because of course all food is a balance between the good and the bad, the goodies and the baddies as I've called them.
Is this furring in arteries just cholesterol?
Well, that's one of the main components, and perhaps one of the more dangerous components, because cholesterol build-up can sometimes crack and break through into the artery interior, the lumen as we call it, and that can sometimes cause clot to form, which leads to a heart attack and strokes. But no, it's not just cholesterol. The people that develop angina sometimes develop chalky, bony bits, which are stable. They're like stone almost. And then a third type is where it's scar tissue or fibrous tissue, we call it. And those are the 3 components, but the one we look out for is the one that's rich in cholesterol. We call these vulnerable plaques because they can burst like a spot on the skin and cause big trouble. Let me illustrate this with a slide. Again, this is an ultrasound picture of a neck artery, and in it you will see lots of bits and pieces not blocking the artery but causing the wall to be enlarged. On the left hand side, on the bottom of the tube, the black tube, you'll see an open area. That is probably pure cholesterol crystals, which is the dangerous bit. Then there's a white bit right in the centre, which is probably chalky, and to the right of that there's probably fibrous tissue, which isn't dangerous at all. The rest of the artery shows a thickened inner lining. We call that intimal thickness, which happens with age.
I'm wondering, are there neutral foods that make no difference either way?
There are actually. The health guidelines, as you know, are asking people to have 5 pieces of vegetable or fruit a day. But as far as the arteries are concerned, and I'm only want to talk about the inner lining of the arteries, fruit and vegetables are neutral. They don't really contain much that's good or bad, apart from fibre, which sometimes stops cholesterol being built up. But let me show you a few illustrations. Here's an illustration of the neutral foods. There are apples and pears and various other fruits. And then we've got the vegetables, carrots and broccoli and things like that. Again, they're mainly water. They don't contain many of the chemicals which would prevent the furring of arteries.
I found it surprising that you say in your books that eating foods containing cholesterol is not a big problem.
That's right. I know it's confusing this because everyone regards cholesterol as bad for them, but the fact is that cholesterol is hardly absorbed in the bowel, and the small amount that is itself doesn't seem to do any harm. How do we know this? Well, if you feed animals cholesterol, pure cholesterol, it doesn't further arteries.
And what are the bad nutrients for the heart? What is the baddies you call them in your books?
Yes, I've tried to make it simple by calling them goodies and baddies, because it's common parlance, but anyway. The bad things are actually the fats. Saturated fat, which is the fat surrounding meat, especially, say, pork fat, and unfortunately lamb, which has got fat insinuated within its fibres. And then there are the trans fats. Trans fats are a bit more difficult to understand chemically, but they arise from boiling fat. So frying chips and frying hamburgers, it turns fats into trans fats. And it's been shown in animal experiments that if you feed animals these fats, it does actually start to further their arteries. So this is what we call the baddies. And this is, of course, is contained in some biscuits and cream and ice cream and cheese and things like that.
Another surprise to me was that you say that eating good nutrients is way more important than avoiding the bad nutrients.
Yes, this is only a theory of mine. It's really based on the fact that many people in the world eat lots of the bad things, but really only the rich people and people in certain areas eat the good things. And my calculations show that if you take a number of different types of diet and analyse them for goodies and baddies, very few people would seem to eat a lot of the good stuff. And in fact, I will come on to show that you can't really eat enough of the good material, whereas loads of people will eat lots of the bad material.
And which diet contains the best of the goodies?
Well, I think the Mediterranean diet definitely does. One experiment which was conducted by a Frenchman in Lyon called Delogril showed that if you gave the Mediterranean diet to people who already had heart attacks, the ones on the Mediterranean diet had fewer heart attacks in the following years. The other good diet we think is the Far Eastern diet, which I guess is sushi and Japanese food, which is very high in this taurine substance.
So what you need to eat is a lot of good nutrients and not so much of a bad nutrients.
Yes, that's correct, but the problem is that food, nearly all food, contains a combination of good and bad. So in the research I did, I was up against the idea of which foods to recommend. So I had to actually create a formula of a good-bad ratio for each food. So obviously foods that contain more good than bad are good for you, and things that have more bad than good are bad for you. And a simple bit of arithmetic allowed me to create what I called the cardiac value of food, which is a ratio of good to bad. So when the cardiac value is high, that food is good for you to eat, and when the cardiac value of the food is low, then it's bad for you to eat. There was no other simple way of doing it. I actually created a symbol which I'll show you in a slide. The green cardiac value sign is meant to mean that it's good for you, with a high value of 25, which is nearly the maximum. I think 30 is the actual maximum for muscles. And then a low one, which is less than 1, which would be something like cheese or chocolate or ice cream.
So from your books, the food can be good, bad and neutral.
Yes.
Could you please give me some examples of very best cardiac value foods?
Yes, it's going to be a bit of a surprise to people, this. It usually is when I tell them, because they think some things are bad for them. But on basis of calculating the cardiac value, that's the ratio of good to bad, the very best is probably mussels. Then you've got liver, walnuts, kidneys, oysters. These are probably amongst the top of all foods that I could analyse.
And what is the 5 worst foods then?
I'm afraid this is going to upset you a bit, because these are all people's favourites. Well, many people's favourites. Chocolate, unfortunately, my favourite food probably, unfortunately is quite bad. It has a very low cardiac value. It's got more bad than good. Cheeseburgers, which for technical reasons I won't go into, but the combination of meat and fat is particularly bad. Then ice cream, coconut, which contains strangely a lot of cholesterol and other fats. And then cheeses like camembert cheese. Probably these aren't good for you in any large quantity, but remember you have to consider how much of these you're going to eat. Small amounts won't make much difference. If you're going to eat large amounts, then it will make a difference probably. So let me illustrate some of these mouth-watering items which are actually bad for your arteries. Lots of different types of cheese. All these lovely chocolates, which you can see there. Eclairs and other pastries and patisserie full of cream and chocolate. Unfortunately, for those liable to further arteries, these are the very worst of foods.
Are these foods bad because of the fat that they contain?
Yeah, partly, but the other reason they're bad is that they don't have any good things in them as well. So you've got a ratio which is high in fat and low in the goodies. So that's actually why they're bad for you.
Does this apply to everybody?
Well, probably not. I mean, if you inherit heart disease, remember that if one parent has it, there's a 4-to-1 chance of getting it. If you have it in your family, coronary artery disease, or if you've had a heart attack, or if you've had your arteries screened and we know that you're furring your arteries, then I would say these things are definitely bad for you. However, there are people like myself, we have no heart disease in our family at all. I've scanned my arteries and they are normal. So I eat some of these things with abandon. I don't care how many cheeseburgers I eat. And people often criticise me. They say, you shouldn't be eating that. But I say, well, my arteries are perfect and my cholesterol is fine, so I don't really care. So no, it doesn't apply to everybody.
How can people be sure that they can eat any kind of foods?
Well, first of all, they need to take their family history into account. So if there's anyone in the family that's had a heart attack or has angina, then they should be wary. And it's those people especially that needs to be checked. There are people that have had heart attacks already who obviously should take heed of this. But if you don't know, then you're going to have some sort of heart check, which should include an artery scan at the very least. There are two main ones. One is an artery ultrasound scan. We can scan the neck arteries and other arteries. But you can also have a CT scan of the heart itself, which shows the amount of furring that is likely to be there. And if these tests are abnormal, then I would avoid these foods as much as you can. If your artery scans are normal, I think it's reasonable to say that you can eat them in moderation and not worry too much.
Can you eat too much of these good foods?
Well, not as far as we know. One of the big drawbacks is the cost, because all the foods that contain the best things are quite expensive. Seafood, smoked salmon, and that sort of stuff, which is very high in protein also, is not just expensive, but it's also low in roughage, and so it could affect your bowel function. But apart from that, I don't really know of any dangerous effects of the Japanese diet or the Mediterranean diet. Not that I know of, anyway.
In your book you said that no diet is good enough. How could you explain that?
Yes, I think it is a difficult point, this. I analyse about 5 or 6 different types of diet. A gourmet diet and a very cheap diet containing lots of carbohydrate and not many good things. And right across the board, I didn't find any diet that contained a maximal amount of all the substances put together. And so I came to the conclusion that no diet is good enough if these substances really are protective to human beings. You simply can't get enough of them in any diet, even the best diet. And I was drawn really to suggest that perhaps we should supplement food to get the maximum amount. But of course only in the people that need it, not in everybody.
Does that mean that we all need to take supplements?
Well, not really, no, but I think the people that are furring their arteries, who have coronary artery disease, who have had heart attacks, or who've got furring shown by various tests but no symptoms, I think they would be better off taking supplements, because I don't think anybody can eat the perfect diet, unfortunately. Whoever prescribes it, the best of diets, is just not really available to everybody. So I think it's simpler and perhaps even cheaper to take supplements.
I believe the person who asked you what he should eat asked you also to make a special supplement for him.
Yes, that's right. He said, I do eat a very healthy diet. I eat all the things that you've told me, but just to be extra sure that I don't develop further coronary disease, do you think you could put this in a supplement drink? And so I got a manufacturer to make this. It's called Heart Sense, like the book, and to the best of my knowledge he's been taking this for many years. Yeah, I've actually got a tub of it here. It's called Heart Sense, and it contains all those nutrients I mentioned before, but in fairly high dose, especially the taurine and selenium and zinc, which are really quite difficult to get in any ordinary diet. This is available, of course, through our website. You can buy it from the shop, which is on our website, details of which we will leave you after this interview.
Has he had done well on this supplement?
Well, we tested him. He had his bypass 20 years ago, and we checked his arteries then. So we had a measure of what his arteries, how furred they were then. And since then, he's been on exercise regime, he's been on a statin drug, he's been on this supplement. And we tested him just a few months ago and showed that the arteries, his natural arteries, are exactly the same as they were 20 years ago. Now, I don't know which of those elements has stopped him growing the furring, but I guess they've all contributed a bit. And we would advocate somebody like him who's had a bypass to do everything he can.
What about statin drug? Is that as important as this supplement?
Well, at this moment in time, we have to say that statins are more important because we have very solid proof of two things. One, that they lower the blood cholesterol, they affect the metabolism of the liver, and they do, in the right dose, definitely on their own stop the furring process in arteries. Unfortunately for these drugs, about 1 in 3 that take them find that they get muscle pains and they just don't feel well on them. And so for many people, a statin is unacceptable. That's another reason to consider supplements. But being absolutely honest, the supplement, although each element has been proven in animal experiments, it has not been proven in human beings. It can't do any harm, but the proof would really rely on lots of future experiments on human beings to prove it. But as far as I can see, if we take the animal experiments as valid, and there is a bit of a scientific jump in that, but if we take it as valid, then this could be quite a useful replacement for those people that can't take statins, or an additional treatment to people who take statins, because after all, we're dealing with a life and death condition here. This isn't a simple thing. These conditions where the arteries fur can actually kill you. So it's rather important to do almost everything you can. So in that spirit, I would say that the supplement is quite useful.
Well, thank you, David, for explaining about the best diet for the heart. And what should people do to get more information?
Well, it's an educational process. They need to learn things about the heart, and I've tried to make it simple enough to access this information in these 2 books of mine, Heart Sense and Eat Your Heart's Content, which you can buy off of our websites. I've also got a very short summary of symptoms and tests in a little brochure which has been translated in one go into 4 languages, called Worried About Your Heart, and it explains all the symptoms and things to look out for and what cholesterol is and all that sort of thing. It doesn't address diet, but it addresses heart trouble, and that can also be downloaded as an e-book. Heart Sense can also be downloaded as an e-book. The bigger book, Eat Your Heart's Content, you have to buy, but they can. If you go to the websites, you can easily access this information. Just to show you an illustration of what I'm talking about, this is the book Eat Your Heart's Content, which is a hardback book. It's not downloadable at the moment, you'd have to buy it, it's the more technical version. Then there's Heart Sense, the book that I showed you, which is the easy version. And they can all be bought online from either our Cypriot website, which is heartsense.com.cy. There's a shop there that you can buy them from, or also the UK website, which is the Cardiac Centre UK.co.uk.
This is Ilona Velarde saying goodbye for now. And please note that our other videos explains about other heart symptoms. If you would like to have more information about this subject, why not buy or download our Heart Sense book, which is easy to read and contains useful information about the heart and the best diet to eat. In case you would like to read something more technical, you can buy our Eat Your Heart's Content book from our websites. And you can also download this very short brochure, Worried About Your Heart, which explains many details about heart problems and which is available in 4 languages: English, Greek, German and Russian. Don't forget to purchase our Heart Sense supplement, which is essential to even the best diet. Soon we will also have Heart Sense tablets, which will be available on our websites. All our products and information are available on our websites, heartsense.com.cy and the Cardiac Centre UK.co.uk.